Hello my dears, welcome back to another video. So word on the street is that the millennials are not very good parents. A lot of videos have been going viral on TikTok of people sharing their encounters with the new generation, Generation Alpha. Generation Alpha. I bet a lot of red pillars are trying to crank out babies right now. And according to these videos, Generation Alpha is not the best behaved.
I'm calling out all the parents. If you're a parent and your child is in pre-K to elementary school to high school, I'm calling you out. The children today, I have never experienced, and I'm 22. Having to teach and work with you guys as children has been the most traumatic experience of my life. I teach 5-year-olds ballet. 5-year-old girls ballet. I have a class of 10 students. They don't respect any authority. You ask them, can you stand in your designated spot? They're telling you no and shut up. They're throwing things at each other. They're throwing things at other people, other classmates. You say, can everybody sit in their spot? I don't want to. I'm not doing that. You don't get to tell me what to do. You're not my mom. You confront the parent. The parent tries to argue with you and fuss at you because you tried to reprimand and redirect their kid. And another thing that's heart-wrenching, is horrifying. It is horrifying. Your 5-year-old daughters are asking to listen to Pound Town and Ski Yee. Your 5-year-old daughters are asking, can we hear Pound Town? I'm playing them Princess Tiana ballet music. And they are asking me, can we hear Pound?
Raising kids who have no respect for authority and are very poor at taking instructions is something that is most definitely not limited to millennials. I can tell you that for free. I used to work in customer service for a car insurance company, and it was one of those insurance companies where you had like a black box or a telematics box. So basically a device installed into your car that tracks your driving behavior, so it knows when you're speeding and all that kind of stuff, and it feeds that information to your provider. So if you were caught speeding, and I'm not talking like a little bit of speeding, you know, I'm not talking like you're going a few miles per hour above the speed limit. So if you were someone who had a habit of doing this, they'd basically cancel your policy because they would consider you to be a risky driver and therefore a liability, which is, you know, kind of common sense. Insurance companies don't want to actually have to pay out money. There was so many warnings about speeding, and you even had to tick a box that said that you understood that your policy could be cancelled if you were caught speeding. So tell me why we would have to deal with these boomer/Gen X parents calling us up complaining about the fact that their adult child's policy got cancelled. The way these parents would go off, you would think that we took the car for a speed drive. You know, you would think that we did it. But they would talk about them as if they're like these poor little toddlers that didn't know any better, which was just so bizarre to me because all I'm thinking is, well, they passed their test, didn't they? So clearly they know how they should be driving, don't they, Karen? But anyways, all that to say, this behavior is not limited to millennial parents. I think every single generation has a set of parents who think that their child is God's gift to humanity that can do no wrong. And they also tend to view the child as an extension of themselves. So whenever you criticize the child, it's as if you're criticizing them, and they get incredibly defensive and quite like confrontational. So I don't think this is limited to millennials at all. I've seen boomers and Gen X parents behave like this with their adult kids as well, you know, like your adult child is breaking the law and you want to fight me. Okay. As for listening to Pound Town, for those of you who've never heard the song Pound Town, it's basically a song by Sexy Red, I believe is her name. She's an American rapper, and the song is just basically her rapping about the color of her genitalia. So there's also that. It could be that the child heard the song being played around the house, and so that's how they picked it up, or they discovered it themselves on social media. Either way, a 5-year-old listening to that is really disturbing.
Y'all are saying that Gen Z is making fun of millennials for raising iPad kids, right? I don't care if I'm a millennial teacher or not. I have to join in with Gen Z here and saying that y'all are raising some kids that are extremely hard to deal with. Is it really that we're being bullied by Gen Z, like they're bullying us about mom jeans, or is it that from a third-party perspective, we're being called out for some poor parenting choices and we just don't want to hear it? We always like to clown on boomers for not having any emotional capacity to take criticism because of their parenting choices, but y'all need to step back and realize that you're doing the exact same thing. I'm a millennial teacher that has taught millennials, Gen Z, and now Gen Alpha, and I can tell you that screen time and the lack of restrictions around screen time has 100% affected their academic performance, the way that they function in the classroom, and their social skills. A lot of these millennial responses to Gen Z calling out them raising iPad kids is them saying, well, you're not a parent yet. You wouldn't understand until you're in that situation. But y'all do realize that Gen Z are old enough to be having kids, right? They're old enough to be parenting, and they're seeing what they're seeing out in public. They're seeing how these kids are acting in the classroom. They're seeing how they're acting out on the streets, and they know that they don't want to have anything to do with that they're going to make different choices around screen time and iPads. And y'all are mad about it. I think I have a unique perspective because not only have I over a decade of experience in the classroom teaching hundreds of other people's kids and seeing the direct effects of screen time and addiction to screen time, but I'm also somebody who has gone all that time without having a child of their own and now is entering into parenthood at the tail end of that. And I can tell you that I'm making the decision that a lot of Gen Z parents are doing now. I'm not giving my kid unlimited access to screens because I know that it's going to stunt their social growth and it's going to stunt their academic performance.
That was fair. I do agree. I think that one of the problems with the upcoming generation is that they are going to have tablets and iPads as their nannies. The previous generations had the television as their nanny. This generation is going to have tablets and iPads as their digital nannies. I do think that all of this new technology is going to probably kill the love of reading because it means that a lot of kids are just not really going to care that much about reading. And I think this is also being proven to be the case because I've also seen some American teachers talk about how a lot of American kids can't even read.
When I tell you that these babies cannot read, they cannot write, and they cannot comprehend, I'm not being funny. I'm being dead serious. It doesn't exist. I have kids constantly asking me, how do I spell window? How do I spell important? How do I spell though? And they be serious. They're dead serious. I could ask them, who is the main character of your story? The story of 4-paragraph story we just read. Can't tell you. They don't know. They don't know. They don't know. It took us 4 weeks to get through how to answer a question in a complete sentence.
And yeah, I'm not really that surprised because they're probably not reading very much at home because they're just on these gadgets. When they're at school, they're probably a lot more disengaged because they're so used to these hyper-stimulating devices that when they have to now sit down in class and look at a whiteboard or look at a book, it's just a lot more boring. When I think back to when I was a kid, like we were all reading Harry Potter books and Twilight books and all that kind of stuff. Is there ever going to be another phenomenon where a whole generation of youth are reading the same books and creating fandoms around these books? I just don't see it. I don't think that's ever going to happen again. Because to be fair, when you're used to bright colors and animations and all this stuff on an iPad, books just can't compete with that. So I do agree with the teacher. I think that a lot of parents need to kind of maybe ease off the devices. That being said, if you have a school and children are coming out of the school illiterate, you should probably check in on that school.
I saw a video going viral on here, and it's a woman talking about how millennials have bad kids. Our kids are ill-mannered, can't read, can't write, and millennial parents don't seem to be doing anything about it. And while that is a blanket statement, and you may immediately get up in arms about it, I will say that I think we can acknowledge that's a blanket statement that does encompass the majority, and it is a crisis. But here's why I think it's happening. We have access to way too much information. We always have. Millennial parents have millions of voices every single day telling us exactly how easily and how badly we can mess this up. Not only that, many of those voices are clinical professionals, which lead us to believe that they might actually be better at raising our own children than we are. We are terrified of messing this up. We are terrified of causing trauma. We are terrified of ruining their childhood. That fear can be absolutely crippling, meaning you do nothing because the millions of voices that are happening around you, you should do this, you should do that, you should private school, you should homeschool, you should be a helicopter parent, you should be a free-range parent, you should discipline, you should do gentle parenting. All of those voices around you are absolutely crippling, and the only thing that they do is suppress the one voice that matters, which is the voice that's inside of you, that is your parental instinct. Our parents may not have done it 100% correctly. Some of them did it well, some of them did it poorly, but they were operating within given the limited sphere of information that they had, and they trusted their parental instinct. The parental instinct is gone within many millennial parents because we are terrified of doing it incorrectly, and we have been told by so many voices that they know better than we do. We can argue until we're blue in the face about the fact that behavior is subjective, learning is subjective, knowledge is subjective. Sure, that's fine. But at the end of the day, it boils down to the fact that instead of listening to our parental instinct, millennials have been conditioned to believe that the millions of voices that are happening around us suddenly know better than we do when it comes to our families.
I can see the truth in that. There is a lot of information now on all the different ways to parent your kid, and there's all these like new trendy parenting styles and parenting techniques and stuff. And so I can see how all this information can be quite overwhelming. I also do agree with her that recently it does feel as though parents are being undermined sometimes. It seems like recently schools are increasingly taking on more and more responsibilities and having conversations with children that have always typically been handled by the parents. So I can definitely understand why in this day and age some parents may feel as though like they're constantly being told or receiving messaging that other people know better than they do when it comes to their own kids. I also feel like there are other things that are probably making a lot of parents question themselves a lot, like for example social media, because I think a lot of parents, particularly mums especially, can't help but compare themselves to other mums and sometimes feel as though they're not good mums or maybe they're not doing enough. Back in the day you would compare yourself to people like who were local to you, like your neighbors, right? Whereas now you get to compare yourself to the world. You get to compare yourself to the mummy vloggers and the family vloggers and all these people who have like these picture perfect looking lives and picture perfect looking families. There's also an element of that that's made some parents feel like maybe they're incompetent or maybe they're not as good of a parent because they're able to compare themselves now to so many different people. I also feel like we have to be fair to the people who are raising kids in this day and age because let's be honest, like the landscape in which they are dealing with is different. You have to navigate how to allow your child to use all these new tech so that they're tech savvy and can adapt with the times while simultaneously trying to limit it so that they don't develop a screen addiction. You also have to figure out how to be an emotionally intelligent parent so that you don't, screw up your kid, but at the same time not be a pushover parent to the point where your child just doesn't respect you and thinks they can do whatever they want. So yes, I do think that people who are having kids in this era are probably going to make a ton of mistakes because there are a lot of new things that they have to navigate and work their way around that didn't exist before. I can understand the temptation to give your child a tablet just to give yourself some breathing room. And I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that sometimes, but I do agree that doing that often and doing it too much is bad. I also think millennials could benefit from not completely disregarding all of the old parental wisdoms from the previous generations. I think that there are some people who are so terrified of making the mistakes of their parents. So in an effort to not repeat the mistakes that they made, you are determined to not repeat anything they did at all. But in the process, you're also taking away the good that they gave you as well. Were your parents perfect? Most likely not. But they did the best they could with what they had and what they knew. And so all we can really do when we have our own children is to just take the good and all the things that you didn't benefit from, you leave that behind and you find a better alternative. I think that's probably going to be a safer way to go than just hopping onto these random parenting techniques that are just trending on these mummy blogs or whatever. But hey, what do I know? I also feel like we're generalizing Gen Alpha. My little sister's Gen Alpha, and I've seen her and I've seen her friends and they're fine. So I think that some people are looking at like the worst case scenarios that they've encountered and just saying like Gen Alpha is doomed, but obviously not. There are still parents out there who are doing a great job with their kids and their kids are turning out perfectly fine. Every single time the youngest generation reaches the age where they've now formed personalities, this is how people talk about them. So of course they're going to speak like this about Gen Alpha, and whatever generation comes after Gen Alpha, people are going to be having the exact same conversations again. I have yet to see someone say positive things about the youngest generation. I think we need to give Gen Alpha some time to see how they turn out as adults, because right now they're still kids, okay? So I think like people need to chill out a little bit. Also, with all due respect, I'm not gonna lie, I can't see them being any worse than us. Okay, our generation is not even in touch with reality. Can they really get any worse? The bar is in hell. But that is all for this video. Do let me know what your thoughts are. Do you think that millennials are really bad parents? Personally, I don't think that they're necessarily the worst parents, but they have a different set of problems. And because the issues that their kids have are different, it feels extraordinary. And I think just like every generation, there are going to be some kids who are really well behaved and some kids who are really poorly behaved. But unfortunately, the really poorly behaved ones are the ones that manage to inspire TikTok videos. But I could be wrong. I guess we'll see. When they're old enough, I guess we'll be able to find out for sure if millennials did a good job or not. But I would be curious to know your thoughts. Do you think that millennials are bad parents, or do you think that we're being a bit too hard on them? Let me know in the comments. If you've enjoyed this video, you may as well like and subscribe. I am also on other socials and I make music if you want to check that out. Thank you for giving me your time today, and I will see you in my next video.